Everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm here today with the remarkable Coleen Davidson. Coleen is a creativity coach, an inspirational facilitator, an artist, and a yoga teacher. And she's here today to talk about the power of creativity, particularly during times of stress, which, Coleen, we are under lots of additional stress right now with the pandemic and a few other things happening locally. So first, I just want to thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I'm really looking forward to chatting with you today. So I'm just going to dive right in. I know that you are an advocate of creativity and that you like to use creative exploration as a tool to manage stress and also as a tool for personal development, to get to know yourself a little better. So how do you use creativity? How would you define creativity, and what do you see as some of the benefits of that creative exploration, particularly during times of stress?
Well, thank you, Melissa. I'm thrilled to be here with you. I mean, in person is always better, but we might as well use the technology. It's a good thing. Well, for me, the creative. So as I would define creativity, it's the idea that we are all creative, but we live in a culture that doesn't really teach creativity, that doesn't maybe value it. People talk about it, but it's not really part of our daily life. So we're all creative, whether it's how you make the bed, how you prepare a meal, what clothes you choose to wear in the morning, what piece of jewelry you put on, how you decorate your house, how you garden. So there's a very narrow view in the culture that, artists are special people and, they're artists and the rest of everyone is not. And, it's not really the case. Everyone has that creative spark, that creative flame that lives in us. The question is, how do we give oxygen to that flame? How do we nurture that flame? Whether you love to dance, or you love to do a yoga practice, or you love to garden, or you love to cook, or whatever brings sort of that joy and sort of deeper connection where you're really present, and it's almost like time stands still when you're fully in that whatever it is you're doing. And so there's no hard and fast what does that mean. So but in the culture it's painter, photographer, musician, dancer. It's like it's limited to a few special people, but I think that everyone's creative, and we need to nurture that creativity in everyone, because I think it brings us into deeper way of living, more joy, more connection, not just with each other, but with ourselves, that exploring internally. It's a doorway in, whatever it is.
Yeah, and you talk about this perfectionist piece, right? And I think that's the fear of being judged, or the concept of, you really do have to be vulnerable to put art out there, to be creative in any kind of way. If it's, making a meal for your family, there's the risk that someone's not going to like it. There's, if you're singing, there's somebody might judge your voice. Like, there's really a vulnerability piece to being creative. So how do we work through, how do we push through that fear of being judged, or not being perfect, or, being vulnerable? How do we work through that barrier?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. And I've been working on this for my own self, silencing the inner critic that sits on the shoulder, and then you go take a hike to it. Like, there's all kinds of practices that I learned through my coaching training and through other work with other people, how to deal with that. And 2 years ago in June, I had a show of a retrospective of 10 years, about 8 years of work. And I was trying to write up an artist statement that really spoke to that, of putting, as you say, you're vulnerable, you're putting yourself out there. And, we live in a very judgmental culture. It's very dualistic, right, wrong, blame, it's always that tension. And if you can come into this stance, and this comes from, from the Buddhist practice and from Pema Chodron, where I've learned this, to be non-dual, to be in this neutral space, so that you can just be open and fearless in a way, trusting in your, as Pema says, in your own basic goodness and your own basic wisdom and your intelligence. And Rumi will say, out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. Meet me there. I'm paraphrasing that one. And all of those things came into play as I decided with my work, how would this look, and what was I trying to say? And so I came up with the artist statement, and I can share this with you because it's in my studio on the wall, so I can share it with you. It says, I in the image exist to take up space, to speak truth, to be fearless, free, open, curious, playful, to love and be loved. So it's really from a place of, I'm here, it is, and I'm here, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm willing to share that with you. And there's a lot of great work through Jung's practices, and Clarissa Pinkola-Estes, the author of Women Who Run with the Wolves, Myths and Stories of the Female Archetype, and she has a great CD audiobook on the creative fire. And it's really about just standing in that fire and nurturing that fire, and it's for everyone. It's the idea of letting go. For me, I had to really work on this, letting go of the inner critic, letting go of the external voice, and just coming into trusting my own heart and not worrying about end product, not worrying about outcome, but just, why am I doing that? Where is this piece coming from inside me, and letting it come without judgment, and just to see what arises. And the minute I start thinking about, oh, what will somebody think, or then I'm shocked. I have to step back. I have to clear it and say, it's just about me and my process. And that's why I do it. I do it for me, for my own internal growth. And once I worked through that and discovered that, then I got this idea to offer a series of courageous creating play shops. I don't call them workshops because there's enough work. So play shops, so that I could share this, because I read a quote from Clarissa Pinkola-Estes, because I was, as you said, vulnerability was really an issue for me, like for most of us. And she said, work is meant to be shared. It's meant to be shared so that we can, support other people in their journey. And people have been generous with me and shared their process and shared that journey and their learning. And then I decided, yeah, why not? Other people can do it. Why can't I? And it doesn't have to be perfect, and you just do your best. And when you can create a learning environment like that, other people can step into it and feel, even though they might be a bit apprehensive, feel supportive, feel cared for, feel like you can take a risk because it's a safe space. Mm-hmm. And I've been really, over the last, let me see, 8 years of doing things like this, I've been really in awe of what people have created. And they have been surprised and in awe of what they've created. So it's, it's like coming home to yourself with the practice when you can.
Yeah, I hear two things that you're saying in terms of takeaways for me as part of working through that vulnerability. And the first thing is figure out what your intention is. So when I have worked with you on various projects, my intention has never been to display it in someone else's home or, to the world. So it's really been about, what am I putting out there almost on a subconscious level? Mm-hmm. And then how can I step back and gain lessons from that? What is it telling me, you know? And it's been such amazing work. And also I think sharing it with the right people, you know, recognizing as I'm working on it, like, I'm not just going to show this to anybody. There's going to be very special people that I'm going to choose to show this to. They're going to help me discover the messages behind it. And the other piece is the playfulness, you know, and you're so great at bringing playfulness to creativity. And I think that perfectionist piece that, you know, society helps to culture, we just kind of have to let go of that and see it as being fun. Like when you were a kid, I mean, kids paint and draw all the time and think it's wonderful, right? And it is. And then we lose that somewhere along the way, and we get shy about it instead of seeing it as, you know, part of self-expression. And that's just, it is what it is. Once it's on the paper, it just is what it is. It's not, like you said, it's not good or bad. It just is. Yeah, it's wonderful. So something else that has, you know, I'm really interested in are, you know, habits. How habits can help to create and nourish health and wellness. And so I'm wondering, do you have any little tidbits, little practices that you do every day that help to kind of nourish that creative exploration that other people who are interested in doing the same could maybe implement in their routine?
Yeah, I sometimes I don't do something every day. It just depends, but I do something consistently. Because for me as a perfectionist, every day becomes too much of a weight. Because inevitably there will be a day I don't want to.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't want to put that pressure on myself, but I do have a consistent practice. And, you know, also it's about being a little bit mindful every day. So as you said, you know, around the whole creative thing, it's a broad spectrum. So it might be, you know, when I'm out for a walk, appreciating the sounds of birds, appreciating the smell of the earth, you know, and especially as we're warming up a little bit, and maybe, you know, the heat of the sun, or the fact that, you know, early in the morning it's quiet and there's no wind, because we live in a windy place, as you know, at the top of the bay of Fundy. So, and then one of my consistent practices is visual journaling. So sometimes it depends. If I have a dream that's particularly vivid, I will make stream of consciousness notes around that, and then maybe a little image that is in my mind, and just make a very unrecognizable to anybody but me sketch of what that is. And I guess what I find about the creative practices for me is they're generative. So they bring energy, they bring life, they bring joy. It brings me hope, you know, not being Pollyanna with my head in the sand. I'm still grounded in my reality. However, I don't want to sink in the quicksand, you know. And then I'll show you this last, well, this couple more. So this one is the third chakra, the power chakra, and the element is fire, and the basic right is, you know, the right to act. And the day I did this, I was feeling very stressed, and you know, you can see all the flames and sort of a house shape. I almost felt like the house was on fire. So I was on fire, and not in a good way. So it helped me. I did some writing about it. You know, it's about the risk of making mistakes, which I had made, and was trying to deal with that. And, you know, yeah, I was working through some issues, my own issues, and that helped, you know. And then we did the heart chakra, you know, anahata, meaning unstuck, unhurt, ruled by the breath, so by prana. So I started doing some breath, going back to some of my breath practices. And then this is the piece that came out. And it's very simple. So, you know, for the first one, I say to people, you know, and you've done some courageous creating with me. Can you trace? Can you use a pair of scissors and a glue stick? That's all you need. And a crayon. And if you can, then that's all you need. It's not rocket science, you know. It's just like you said, when you were little, you did all these things without worrying about it, before people were making judgments.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, someone was better than you and you had no talent, and all that stuff is so damaging to the creative spirit and to that whole idea of perception, you know, the idea of being perceptive. Mm-hmm. So this one, I think, for me was very positive. This was the throat chakra, you know, so the power of positive vibrations. Mm-hmm. And thinking about Vishuddha, that chakra, expressing, communication, to speak and live your truth authentically, and to have the right to speak and to speak your truth, which is so important, so we don't get constricted, you know, and that the system has fluidity in it, our system. And I like this, you know, to live a creative life, we must lose our fear of being wrong. Mm-hmm. So that idea of fear, right? That idea of judging, that idea you said of vulnerability. And so I think those practices really helped me. And, you know, when I had my show a couple years ago, I was working through some stuff for the last 8 years, and I found a deeper connection to my work, and everybody can find that deeper connection. And a simple practice, if you don't want to use the chakras, which is fine because not everybody is into that, right? Is if you have a couple magazines or you like certain colors, you can just cut things out, you know, from any kind of magazine and glue them in a book.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything. Or if you want to then get a bit more playful with it, you know, you can fool around with it.
Yeah.
It just kind of depends. And it can be very, very simple. And it might be, you might take something off the internet. You know, here's something I love. I love Durga, the warrior goddess. And I found this picture online and I printed it just to have it in my journal. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't mean that you have to draw anything. It could be stream of consciousness writing, you know, asking yourself a couple questions, you know, how do I feel? What do I imagine? What do I see? And there's all kinds of prompts out there. Yeah. And I think the important thing, though, is to not be too goal driven, yes, but to be more open, curious, and playful.
So on a personal note, I've, you know, as I mentioned, I've created a few projects with you, a few pieces of art, if I dare say, call them art. And one was, I started with the collage exercise because that's what I felt comfortable doing. And I have a collage that I created a few years ago in my bedroom, and every day when I look at it, I see different layers, I see different messages, I recognize different themes. It's really interesting. They're the same pictures, nothing's changed, same words, you know, all cut out of a magazine, but it means something different to me every time I see it, and I think that's really interesting. And then I also created a larger piece that during a time that was particularly stressful for me. And I'm so glad that I was brave enough and playful enough to do that exercise, because there was so much value in that activity with you, but also in having this piece now in my home that, you know, reminds me of that experience, reminds me how much I've grown since that experience, how much I learned through that process. You know, I think there's something really magical about that creative exploration. So thank you for introducing me to this process and for helping generate some bravery in terms of being creative. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for sharing, you know, all of your tools, your skills with us today. I really greatly appreciate you.
Well, Melissa, thank you. I'm really happy to hear you say that, you know, your collage is still speaking to you. So when you create something that has meaning for you, that it comes from that authentic place in yourself, it will continue to speak to you, because this is not my quote, but I use it a lot. You know, it makes the invisible visible.
Mm.
And Thomas More, you know, who wrote Care of the Soul and all kinds of marvelous books. We had some time with him this summer at the Art and Yoga Conference with Hari Kiran, his wife. And he talked about the alchemy in art, right? And that a good piece will continue to speak to you because it has meaning for you. And so the fact that you have created these pieces from yourself, you know, your authentic self, they will continue to speak to you because they become, the piece becomes its own, it has its own existence. It becomes separate from you, but it still speaks to you. That's why I said the image, I and the image exist to take up space, to speak truth, you know, to be fearless, free, open, curious, playful, and to love and be loved. And that idea of value, that idea of non-judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So the work is speaking to you.
Yeah.
Which means a great deal.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It is powerful. And I love what you said. You say, I see this, you know. So we think of, anytime we look at something, you can say, and Hari Kiran taught us this, you know, what do you see, feel, and imagine? And every time you look at something, you might see something different. You might feel something different, because every day you're different.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Coleen, for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Melissa. Take care.